Welcome to the Clear the Shelf podcast with Chris and Chris, the show that meets at the intersection of education and entertainment to discuss online arbitrage, retail arbitrage, wholesale, and all facets of selling on Amazon. We'll bring you news, tactics, strategies, insights, stories, and interviews to help you grow your Amazon business. And now, here are your hosts, Chris Grant and Chris Rasick. What's up, Amazon sellers, and welcome back to the Clear the Shelf podcast with myself and my Aspergilliform co-host, Chris Rasick. Today, we've got Wes, aka the Toy Investor, on the show. Wes runs a toy investing newsletters and is one of, if not the most informative Twitter follow when it comes to investing in toys. And today, our goal is to turn this interview into a bit of a masterclass on toy investing. Now, to be quite honest, it's mostly for Chris and I, but you get to tag along and learn how to invest in things like toys and Lego. Wes, welcome to the show, man. I'm really glad you're here.
Very excited, guys. I know I just mentioned it, but I want the audience to know, too, that you guys really helped me get my start with Amazon. And it was 6 years ago. I was looking at your guys' videos on my TV for Keepa and Tactical Arbitrage. So very excited to be here. Full circle moment. Thank you, guys.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
Now, you guys know the drill. It takes us minutes to prepare for each one of these episodes. So if you find some value in this podcast, do us a favor, share this on social media, tag Chris and I so we can thank you. It would mean a ton to us, and it helps keep us motivated to keep coming back and hounding some guests to come and chat with us. All right, let's dive in, man. Can you share your background a bit and kind of how you got started in all this?
Yeah. I feel like the best way to start is actually with a little bit of a story. It'll be a nice segue into toy investing. And it goes back to when I first started Amazon, which was late 2019. So I came up in the COVID era when it was very easy to find products to sell online, right? And one of the things that happened because of COVID that completely changed my life and my business was the Disneyland and Disney World shutdowns. All the parks were closed, right? And because of that, Disney had no customers coming into the parks to purchase their merchandise. So what they ended up doing was mailing out all of their products to all the Disney stores that were open at the time across the country. And that's kind of how I got my sourcing start, was going to these Disney stores in California and picking up all this stuff that they weren't necessarily selling for profit. They just wanted to make space because they couldn't get rid of it. And I ended up acquiring so much Disney product that it didn't make sense to send it all into Amazon at one time. So I started putting some in boxes and putting it in my closet. This was in probably the first 3 or 4 months of my Amazon journey. Fast forward about 9 months and Amazon's going pretty well. Decided it was time to move from an apartment to a home, and came across those old boxes of Winnie the Pooh plushes and Joy from Inside Out plushes and Rapunzel frying pans. And these were products that I was paying $3 or $4 for that 9 months later were selling for $75 to $175 each. And that was a huge moment for me early on in the business where I was like, okay, there is something here for discontinued toys and making money on Amazon that doesn't involve me going bra shopping all the time and doesn't involve me hunting for oatmeal. So that was kind of how I got my start, my foot in the door into the whole toy investing thing. But yeah, late 2019, thanks to you guys and Hustle Buddies is where I really got my start.
That's awesome. Now, yeah. I got to ask, were you able to sell through enough of those discontinued toys for the down payment on the house, or at least a big portion of it?
I'm in California, man. I'm still renting.
Oh,
yeah, exactly. But yeah, it was pretty crazy to see these plushes that I was selling for $19.99 had tripled in value less than a year later, and that's when the gears started turning. You know, unfortunately, all those Disney stores are closed now. Yeah.
So you stumbled into it, but can you, now that you've established yourself, your handle reflects the investment strategy. So can you tell us how you define toy investing right now? And could you give us maybe an example?
Yes, that's actually super important. The definition, it may be kind of obvious to some people, but I would say it's when you purchase a toy and you're expecting its future resale value to exceed its current value. And it's important because it's going to open your eyes up to a lot more leads when you start looking at things on a 6 to 12 month scale rather than just what the lead is doing right now. But we'll talk more about that in a bit. Actually, I do want to show you guys some examples. Let me pull up my screen here real quick. Do I just press present? Is that it?
Yep.
Okay. Present, share screen, share screen, and here we go. Okay. Is that working or no? There we go. Awesome. So yeah, I wanted to bring some examples for you guys to show you what I'm talking about when I talk about toy investing, and for people out there that don't really know what it means. I pulled up 4 different examples from different toy categories. This first one is a Disney Descendants doll. This was, I don't know if you guys partook in this one, but these were $15 on Walmart.com, and there was thousands of them. And there was even a point in time where these were in Ollie's for $25. And that was, I think, 2.5 years ago. And I think I had about 300 of them, and I let most of them go in the $75 to $100 range, which was pretty healthy profit. But if you've been a little bit more patient, you're looking at almost 1,200% ROI 2 years later, which is just absolutely insane to me because the rank is still solid. Descendants is still very relevant. And someone out there, obviously these guys, they're making a ton of money, right? So this was a fun one. Can't talk about toy investing without talking about Pokemon, especially right now, which is in a massive bull run. These prices are a little inflated. eBay's a little bit cheaper, but last year, just less than a year ago, you could have purchased this booster box of Fusion Strike Pokemon for under $150.
You gotta switch the share on the screen.
Oh shoot! Sorry. Let me
It's all
see.
right.
Why is it only showing one screen? Stop screen. Present. Share screen. Share screen. Let's just do window.
Yep, that'll work.
There we go. Let's see if that one pulls it up. Okay, now we can see it. Cool. Yeah, so this Fusion Strike booster box of Pokemon, anyone could have purchased it last year for $150 or less. On Amazon right now, it's $1,200, but again, that's very inflated. On eBay, it's selling for about $800, but even then, absolutely killer for a 1-year hold, right?
Mm-hmm.
And anyone could have purchased as many of these as they wanted. They were plentiful. Kind of under the radar, you can go with action figures. This is a Poison Ivy action figure from Batman. Amazon was in stock plenty of time, $26.49. Could have purchased it wholesale for about $20. Very shortly after being discontinued, goes up into the 50s. 1 year later, sitting at $200. You'll see pretty similar results on eBay as well. So if you want less fees, it's selling for about $180 to $200, which is pretty crazy, which gives you almost 500% ROI. And lastly, can't talk about toy investing without Lego. Did you guys partake in the fish tank at all?
I did not.
No.
I did.
You did? Yeah.
Yeah.
There was 480 of us, it seems, 488 of us, which is crazy to me. I've never seen a listing with so many sellers. And this one still bounced back because this was $22 plus 13% cash back. And right now it's a little over $100. But it's been kind of steady around $100 since last year. So really all you had to do was hold for a year or a little bit more, and you're getting close to 300% ROI for something that was in stock for a week straight and had thousands available. So I brought these examples specifically because all of these were available to everyone for a very long time, and anyone could have had 1,000 or 2,000 of these. And I find that super inspiring to know that these sort of products are out there, and a single SKU can really just outperform an entire business if you have enough conviction when you buy it, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. And I'm going to want to get into cash flow and all of that stuff here shortly.
Of course.
You know, but before we go there, like, were you ever like a casual collector, or did you just happen to dive into this just sort of backwards?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up on Pokemon. Pokemon cards were a big part of my childhood. So I did collect a lot of that when I was a kid. I played with action figures when I was a kid until I was, 8 or 9 years old. But other than that, no, a lot of the stuff that I sell now, I never really was a fan of it, or I admired how cool some stuff looked, but I've never built a Lego set in my life. I might catch some flack for that, but yeah, it's stuff that I've just always kind of admired, but never really dove into except for Pokemon, until I realized that I can kind of translate a lot of that Pokemon collecting knowledge into other collectible toys as well. But yeah, that was a big catalyst for me was Pokemon cards.
Awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so you stumbled into it. Now, obviously, COVID doesn't happen all the time, so you kind of your opportunity came through COVID, and then you showed us those examples. So I kind of want you to connect the dots on basically how you became an authority, because you built a voice and you have quite an audience on Twitter, and through your newsletter. So how did you come to be the authority? How did you develop that expertise? And then
Yeah.
can you talk about how content has shaped your business and your strategy overall?
Sure. Yeah. First of all, that's a compliment. I don't consider myself an authority. That's always got a little bit of imposter syndrome. So thank you. But I think going from I had a big ramp up period with this, so I never dove 100% into buy and hold. I kind of ramped up into it. And because of that, the first 2 years was like maybe 20% holds and then like 50% holds. And then I went all in on holds and did only toys. It allowed me to dabble and get data on a lot of different toy lines. I made a lot of different mistakes. So I think for a lot of people, because I'm pretty transparent about that, even the things that go wrong, I think they appreciate that. And I'm always happy to share what's gone wrong and what's gone well. And I think people appreciate that transparency. And zooming out on my experience with toy investing, I've got a pretty good track record now. I've made some pretty big call outs, whether that was in the newsletter or in group chats. And I've usually got the receipts to back it up. And I think when people start to see that, they kind of see that there's something there. Content shaping my business, I wouldn't say I've really changed much of my business model due to content, but I have met a lot of cool people because I've been posting on social media. And that's more people to bounce ideas off of. That's more people that come to you with ideas, and you guys can kind of talk about different leads that pop up. But for the last few years, it's really been the same strategy, just continuing to fine tune it to the point that it is now, where these unicorns that I share, I call them unicorns, by the way. These unicorns are starting to become more identifiable, and I can kind of ping them earlier than I used to be able to. Does that answer your question? I'm not sure if that's kind of.
Yeah. No,
okay.
Absolutely.
Cool.
I'm kind of curious, and I think I might know the answer, but what makes like Legos and toys so unique and compared to like electronics or books? Like, is it because we're in this, kid alt time period? Is it something else? Has it always been this way? Like, what makes people pay $200 for a $20 piece of plastic?
That's honestly a good question, and I ask myself that every day when I sell something. That's just sometimes I still doubt the customer, but it never ceases to amaze me. Really, I think collectibles they've existed since before e-commerce, right? And people have always paid ridiculous things to complete their collections, or because they don't want to ruin Christmas for their kids, or maybe a toy, there's only one depiction of a certain character in doll form, and their kid really wants that doll, right? So certain things like that will really drive the price up on things that you couldn't even fathom in things like grocery, right? Something being discontinued in itself can actually even make it more popular. Like, a lot of people don't realize they want something until it's gone. That was the case for a lot of the examples I was sharing earlier. And then you have things like FOMO, hype, catalysts from movies. These are all things that can drive price up, that really make toys a very unique category. And it's important to not judge the customers that have a lot more money than us. It's pretty crazy to think about what they're willing to spend their money on.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you said you can't do that in grocery. I do know there's a Cheeto in the shape of Mary Magdalene going for $1,000 on eBay. So A little pushback on that statement. But,
Yeah, that is kind of a trend right now, isn't it?
Wes, you've called toy investing Amazon proof, and platform risk is kind of a hot topic right now. So,
Yep.
how exactly is toy investing insulated from the typical amount of platform risk?
Yeah, this is actually one of the most important reasons that I actually went all in on toys. And it actually goes back to my first 6 months selling on Amazon. I got suspended. I was suspended, and Amazon didn't tell me why. They just said that I was related to another account. And at the time, I think I had maybe like $10,000 or $15,000 invested. And I'll never forget how sick to my stomach I felt, thinking that this was over. Right? Have you guys been suspended? I don't know if I know you guys have been Section
Multiple
3,
times.
but yeah. So you guys know that gut punch feeling, right? Because your business is in the hands of someone that is overseas, might not be making a lot of money, and might not really care. And so when that happened to me, and I finally got unsuspended, I was suspended because I changed my bank account information. I realized that I wanted to gravitate towards something that, if on the off chance I did get suspended permanently, the inventory that would come back to me, I could sell it in other places. So collectibles kind of transcend past the platform. If someone wants a specific collectible, they're going to find it whether it's on Amazon or not, right? If I got a bunch of Trader Joe's sent back to me, I don't know what I would do with it. But if I get a bunch of Lego sets sent back to me, I can go to Marketplace, I can go to eBay, I can go to Walmart, I can go to Whatnot, I can go to a flea market, and all that stuff's going to sell, and I'm going to get my money back. So for me, looking at all the different categories, I felt like toys was one of the safest, with all the turbulence and automation that Amazon has been implementing into suspensions and their support and things like that.
That's interesting, because so essentially the factor that makes it worth holding long term also makes it minimizes the platform risk. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Follow up on the suspension. Since you were suspended so early, what where'd you find the confidence to continue on with Amazon? Was your faith kind of shaken a little bit, or how did you proceed after you got reinstated?
Ever since then, anyone you talk to that knows me will probably tell you I am the most cautious seller on the planet. Like, I will investigate every single listing down to the bullet points in the description to make sure there's nothing, no weird keyword. If something is even slightly off on the product, I won't even risk it. So I definitely proceed with caution a lot more ever since then. But the reason that I have not run away from Amazon is because I've seen people deal with really extreme cases. And if they didn't break the rules, they've always gotten it resolved from what I've seen. I've seen a guy that sold a Jurassic Park item. Customer returned an actual counterfeit. Amazon deemed it sellable, sold the counterfeit to someone. He got suspended, sent in an invoice that was 2 years old, and he got unsuspended within a week and a half. Mm-hmm. So it's like if there's an actual something going on where someone can get unsuspended when actual counterfeit stuff is involved, I do believe there is always a path to resolution if you hire the right help or you make enough noise. And because I'm so cautious to not break the rules, I don't think there's a world where Amazon's going to permanently suspend me. I think I'll always have a path to resolution.
I like the positivity. That's unusual. That's unusual in today's Amazon space, which is, and I think that we're fairly positive about that. Whenever I see people who have been off the platform for years or something like that, or wrongfully suspended, you're typically hearing about 90% of the story, and there's 10% being held back. Now,
I completely agree. Yep.
Saying all of that, I do want to play devil's advocate a little bit.
Okay.
And you've already brought it up. You said the guy was suspended for a counterfeit and gave the invoice that was 2.5 years old. And I know there are going to be people in the comments or on Twitter who say, well, Amazon says invoices have to be within 365 days.
Yep.
How do we push back on that when something is older, when we are selling something discontinued?
That is a great question, and it's always in the back of my head because you're right. It is in the TOS that Amazon says invoices should be within 365 days. What I have seen, however, is that on some specific violations, and myself included, the violations will sometimes erase that from the text. So you know how they say like the invoice should require this, this, and this. Several times now I've received those and it's taking out the 365 days thing. And, I think Amazon puts that in the TOS to protect themselves so they can utilize it if they need to. But most of the time, depending on who you get, the seller support agent probably isn't going to fight back on that if you can give them what they want in an efficient way that makes sense, right? Again, I've submitted older invoices in 365 days plenty of times and I've beat every case. With that being said, I am now preferring to send my older holds to Walmart because they are on the record saying they're okay with older invoices and the profit's better. So if that is something that's not within someone's risk tolerance, I would say Walmart is an option. But again, I have not run into that issue personally, and I do think most of the time it should be okay. But again, it's within your risk tolerance. So
yeah, I agree with you. That's why I wanted to bring it up because I think sometimes we forget that Amazon has to paint with this broad brush on occasions. But then, when the rubber really meets the road, we're able to get a little bit more nuanced.
Exactly.
So.
Worst case, you could always fly to Seattle and stand out front with a sign and you'll figure it out, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Most of the people who listen to this are probably going to be folks who are doing fast flips. And I know now you're like 100% long-term holds.
Yep.
How do you change that mindset? I ask this because this is a problem that I have. I want my money now, and so I'm curious, like what switch needs to be flipped?
Yeah, it's another big reason that I switched to it was because what I was running into was seeing a lot of the listings tank with competitors and just never recovering, right? And it would be on products that really had no reason to be selling for as much as they were. Maybe it was just a new listing. Maybe there was just a quick supply chain issue, and then they just never recover. So for me, knowing that toys discontinue, I take solace in that, knowing that things aren't going to tank. That's a big thing for me. So being able to gravitate away from competitors was a big mindset shift for me, knowing that if I'm looking at leads that others aren't looking at, I can kind of get away from the herd and stop running into this issue of prices going down in price or OA leads being tanked into oblivion and that sort of thing. It is a big mindset shift because a lot of the time it's just a math equation, right? It's fast flips are most of the time going to be better than any sort of long-term hold. But then I go back to like the leads that I shared early on, those unicorns, and those are the sort of things that I'm striving to be able to identify. And I know that as you build up the skill set over years of toy investing, eventually you'll get to a point where your holds might actually be able to outperform that math equation of getting 15% ROI every month. The first couple of years are rough, but I think once that skill set is high enough, I do think that holds can outperform the fast flips if you pick the right things. But it's definitely a shift. It's hard to do. It's hard to switch that in your brain for sure.
Yeah. Now that threshold, do you have that calculated out, or do you just kind of go by feel? Is there a point where you're like, in the long run, I need at least X% ROI to justify the hold? Like, do you have metrics like that?
Kind of. The most important metric for me is profit per sale. Reverse engineering my goal. I know because I like to operate by myself. I don't have employees. I work from my home. I know that I can comfortably pump out between 50 and 60,000 items per year across all the platforms. So ideally for me, I want to be getting around the $10 profit per sale mark. Whether that comes from something I paid $20 for or $50 for, I'm pretty happy either way, as long as the investment is secure and safe. I think there is a monetary value for something that I know is not going to be reprinted. I know is not going to have competition, and I know I can dominate it for the next 2 years on the listing kind of thing. It's kind of like buying replens in advance, So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with that. It's ROI has become less important to me and more about just a secure, good investment that's going to make me $10 or more is kind of my big thing. But I obviously I shoot for higher ROI, but sometimes you get a lead that's just so secure and there's no other sellers. And if I can make $10 a sale on it and it costs me $50, like, sure, why not? I'll do it all day,
That's really interesting.
Mhm.
So probably if I had to list the top two things that I most want to talk to you about, one of them, of course, is sourcing and your strategy. So let's dig into that a little bit, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through your sourcing strategy? Are you buying online? Are you going in store? A little bit of both?
Yeah. This is where I could probably talk for like 2 hours. So let me think of the best way to how I would start this off. I think the first thing, if someone wants to get into this and wants to start learning how to source this sort of stuff, the first thing you need to realize is that toys are in a completely different life cycle than most other products. So an example I like to give out is think about like Oreos or Reese's or Doritos, right? Those manufacturers have no reason to discontinue those products because the same customer is going to go and buy that same product every single week. I'm going to go and buy a Reese's every single week, right? So Reese's will be here forever. How many times does someone buy the same toy? Usually once, right? So basically, pretty much every toy, every collectible toy, not things like Fisher Price, those are printed forever, but most collectible toys, they're all a ticking time bomb until they're discontinued. It's only a matter of time. And so once you understand that, now your goal is to start looking for those toys that are at the end of their lifespan, right? What are the ones that are actually showing signs of being discontinued? And that's where a lot of the experience comes in. And it takes a lot of research. Is you have to be looking for clues, because just because something is discontinued doesn't mean you go out and buy a lot of it. Something could be discontinued, but it still might take 5 years to mature. You really want to be identifying those toys that are about to discontinue, but they're going to continue to have really solid demand or even higher demand in the future. So you're looking for things like what's a future catalyst, right? So for example, Spider-Man movie's coming out next year. We know on the Lego retirement list, there is a Target exclusive Spider-Man helmet that's being discontinued. So 1, it's being discontinued. 2, it's Spider-Man, which is popular. 3, we have a movie. We've got all these clues telling us this is probably going to be a good investment, right? You're looking for things like, what are other retailers doing with their sales? Is this an item that's being clearanced everywhere? If so, that could be a sign that the manufacturer just is done with this, right? They're making shelf space for something different. I mentioned it earlier, but like how many other options exist for this specific character? So a lot of people assume things like Batman and Superman are the best investments. But the truth is, there are so many Batman figures and there's so many Superman figures that they might not necessarily be good. But that Poison Ivy figure I shared earlier, there is no other Poison Ivy figure. So that's why that one skyrocketed, right? Because that was the only option for collectors to finish their collection at the time. So a lot of it is looking for clues like that in combination with if something is discontinued. If you really want to get nitty gritty, and this is where this can take up a lot of your time, but this is where a lot of discoveries are made. It's analyzing by toy line. So say you want to learn about Rainbow High, for example, you can go on Google, type in a list of every Rainbow High doll, right? You get a checklist of all the Rainbow High dolls from the last 5-6 years, and you pull up all the Amazon listings, hundreds of them, and you start looking at the Keepa charts. And you'll start to pick up on little things like, I'm starting to realize $13.99 is the lowest they'll go on a Rainbow High doll that's this size. And I'm starting to notice that when they hit $13.99, about 2 months after, Amazon sells out. So then you set a Keepa alert for $13.99, get the Keepa alert. That's when you investigate a little bit more. You Google that doll, you realize it's sold out everywhere. And you're like, okay, maybe this is a good time to buy based on how the history of this toy line has performed in the past. So you're looking for clues, you're diving into specific toy lines. Those are the two main aspects of it. And obviously I could talk about that for a long time, but that's kind of where you want to start off when you're researching these products.
Interesting.
Yeah. with that, by the way. You guys have seen so many listings, so you guys would be able to kind of predict the trajectory of a lot of stuff very quickly. You guys would have a knack for it, I think.
That's very interesting. Yeah, along those same lines, when you are doing that, and say your keep alert hits, how are you deciding how deep to go? Oh, well, actually, let's talk about the Spider-Man mask. Yeah,
Yeah.
how do you decide how deep you're going to go? Is it, yeah, how much cash you have available to invest? Is it, yeah, how much demand do you think there will be once the movie comes out, or is it something else?
Yeah, there's so many factors that go into that. I really wish there was a formula. Honestly, it's so hard. Um, a lot of it comes down to what you know about that supply chain and how long you're expecting the hold to be. So, for example, I don't like to sell Lego that are not retired because Lego can send out nasty letters to you and you never know when they're going to escalate that to the next level, right? So, I only like to sell non retired Lego. So, right now, even though there are a lot of good Lego deals, like with Target Circle Week, I'm holding right now for probably at least a year. So I have to weigh that versus what is the opportunity cost of some other toys that I might be able to sell in 6 months come Christmas, right? So I might want to start building that portfolio of the Lego set. So I'll do a little bit now, but most of that buying is going to be towards the end of the year. But I'm going to put more capital towards something and go deeper on something that has a potential shorter hold. Now, when it comes to the long-term holds, how much I'm determining I'm going to purchase, a lot of the time that will come down to, for example, say I know Amazon is the only one in stock on a specific toy, right? And I can see their stock and they have 700 of them. And Target sold out, Walmart is sold out. I call my distributor and I say, hey, can you guys get this? And they say no. That might be an opportunity where I say, okay, I'm just going to buy out Amazon. I'm going to buy all 700 units. So I'm going to go deep on this one because now I can kind of corner the market and I know no one else is going to be getting this product. So a lot of the decisions when it comes to how deep you're going to go come down to what else is happening around, and how confident you are in the supply. What you don't want to do is go deep on something and Amazon restocks, right, for a year straight. That's how you lose a lot of your money quickly. So the more confident I am that the supply is cut off and competition is low, the deeper I'll go, for sure.
Beautiful.
Now so not only do you have to, you make several projections, but as far as before we move off of like the evaluation part of the sourcing process, there are different levels of difficulty as far as like projecting popularity. Like you mentioned Spider-Man, that's, it probably always going to be top of mind in the pop culture mind. But then there's stuff like Descendants, and I have daughters. I probably watch more Disney Junior than the three of you guys. I'm probably top of the list as far as that's concerned. But that's not something everyone does. So how do you balance a tentpole franchise like Batman, Superman, Spider-Man versus the Descendants? A kind of niche teen Disney movie, and and then in terms of deciding what to buy when you source. Like how do you project something staying relevant, essentially?
That's a very good question because I've been burned several times where maybe as a fan I've enjoyed a movie and then I'll go and I'll invest in like some of the side characters, but I was kind of blinded by my like for the character, but pop culture didn't really embrace them, kind of thing, So I lost money on those sorts of things. So it can be challenging. A big thing is just really paying attention to what's coming up. So, for example, the reason the Descendants popped off was there was actually two major reasons that was public knowledge, everyone knew about, was that a new Descendants movie was coming out, and this was a Descendants merch from the previous movie. And so when a new movie comes out, usually the old merch is discontinued. And what's interesting, what you'll notice is that a lot of the time when a new movie comes out, it's not the new merch that you make the money on. It's the old merch that's adjacent to it because that's already discontinued. The new merch is the stuff that is being mass produced and is available everywhere, right? So there's no reason for it to really spike up in price. So knowing that Descendants 4 was coming out, that was a green flag and a clue that if you had this 4-pack of dolls, maybe you should hold and wait for that. The other major thing that happened with that one is that Hasbro lost the license to Disney Princess. So it was guaranteed that was being discontinued. even though it had been around for 5 years, there was absolutely no way more was going to be produced. So it had all the green flags of like, okay, this should be a really good long-term hold. Now, $250 for that is pretty crazy if you think about it. I was happy to sell for 100, but again, can't judge the customer, right? People wanted those specific dolls because those were the only renditions since Mattel took over. They weren't going to make them in that style anymore, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of deciding which characters are going to be popular in the future does come down to what's slated for release, and being able to identify what are kind of those timeless characters, Deadpool, Wolverine, Spider-Man, versus what are those flavor of the month ones. Like, I don't know. I lost a lot. Did you guys see the Spider-Verse movies, the animated ones? Mm-hmm. Chris? Okay. So one of you has, one of you hasn't. If you remember Spider-Punk, right? He was very, very, very popular when the movie came out. Very popular. His action figures soared to the ceiling with profit. But when he's not really relevant on the big screen, his sales go way down. So he was kind of a side character. I probably put too much money into him versus something like Miles Morales, where his figures most of the time will do pretty good.
That's interesting. So you're studying, the market. You knew about the licensing agreement between Hasbro and Mattel. You've previously mentioned Hasbro Pulse live streams and other events like that to use to identify market signals. Can you dive into that a little deeper? Like how does monitoring the news and how do we execute on that strategy to get an edge?
Yeah, this is one of the best tips I think people should adopt, even if you're not doing toys, is using social media as data. So one of the most profitable things I started doing was following all of the favorite brands that I like to source on social media, every single channel, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, whatever. And what that does is you start to see their posts and you become familiar with how many likes they're getting on average when they post something, right? So say you're following McFarlane, they do the DC toys, and you notice every time they post something, they get about 2,000 likes. Maybe they post something ugly and they get 1,000 likes, and all of a sudden they post a Wonder Woman figure and it gets 25,000 likes. Well, that is a massive clue for you to investigate further into this product. So you go into the comments, you read the comments, and you realize everyone is commenting, oh my God, finally a Wonder Woman figure. Oh my God, this is the best Wonder Woman figure ever. That's more data for you to understand that there is going to be a wide customer base here. And maybe one of those comments tips you off to something like, someone said, oh my God, finally a Wonder Woman figure. Is this the first one? Sure enough, it might be, right? So maybe you want to go and pre-order this. Maybe you want to just keep an eye on it when it comes in stock on Amazon. Hasbro Pulse is a direct line to Hasbro where they're revealing figures and you're getting live feedback from your potential customers in the chat room. They're saying this figure sucks or this figure is great. And you can use that as a data point to potentially invest in later. They'll also reveal things like this is exclusive to Walmart. Now you know to keep an eye out on this specific date to pre-order this. Whereas a lot of lead lists, they might not know about it until it's already up for pre-order, right? So being in tune with your favorite brands to sell, whether that's Pokemon, Godzilla, whatever, you should be following them and the influencers on all social media because you'll be in tune a lot more with what's going on for the fans and what they want.
Fascinating.
Thank you for listening to the Clear the Shelf podcast. My magnanimous co-host Chris Rasick has put together a gift for you for being a listener. It's called the Monthly Goal Tracking Spreadsheet, and it's free. The spreadsheet will help you break down and track how much you've purchased, which should be a leading indicator of how much you will sell, and then you'll be able to track how much you've sold as well as your estimated monthly profit on a daily basis. This will all feed into the daily averages so you can ensure that you're on track to meet your goals each and every month. Grab it for free today over at cleartheshelf.com/goal-tracking. Thanks again for being a listener. Now back to the show.
I've got to ask, and I don't know, hopefully I'm bringing something that maybe you haven't thought of or have never done before, but are you using, like, let's say Twitter, for example, you follow Hasbro, McFarlane, and all those. Are you utilizing AI or Grok at all to pull out maybe the posts that have negative sentiment and positive sentiment and kind of summarizing what people are saying among those things?
That is an interesting idea. I have not done that specifically. I have dabbled with AI to see if it can tell me what it thinks some good investments would be, and I've found it to be very wrong a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But no, I have not done anything with sentiment on posts, which is very interesting. I like that idea.
Okay.
I was talking to a buddy about something that could be interesting, is using AI to toss a bunch of Keepa charts at it. I don't know if this is possible, and for a specific toy line, so say Rainbow High, and maybe AI can say, on average, Amazon runs out of stock, this many days into the toy's lifespan. That would be interesting to know, because then you can kind of have an idea if a Rainbow High doll is 500 days old, and on average Amazon runs out of stock at 500 days and it's on clearance, could be a good signal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Could do it manually, but yeah, too lazy.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about cash flow a little bit. How do you manage cash flow both for and from your toy investments? And then I'll have a follow-up for you.
Sure. So that's always a battle, because obviously holding stuff, your cash is locked up. But ideally, if you're picking decent stuff, the stuff you're selling now, you should have a constant flow of things from like 6 to 9 months ago. So most of what I'm selling now is stuff that I bought, during winter clearance. Stuff that might have been a Black Friday deal, or maybe some Lego investments that have matured pretty early. That's the stuff I've been able to start letting go these last couple months. A lot of the stuff that I'm selling during Q4 is stuff that I got during summer clearance, or stuff that I got maybe a little bit earlier in the year. So once you kind of have gotten past that ramp up period of a certain percentage of holds versus flips, eventually you have your holds that will act as cash flow. But it takes a little bit to get there. Now, there is an issue I run into where a really good opportunity will pop up, and maybe I don't have enough cash for it that I want. So for example, right now I want to make sure I have cash for summer clearance, right? But there's a specific toy that I want to buy like $30,000 of. So I don't want to use my summer clearance money. What do? I've got to look at my inventory that I'm holding, and I have to be honest with myself, and I have to cut the weakest ones. And so you have to not form an emotional attachment, because things will change. You might invest in something and all of a sudden it appears at a liquidation place and someone has 1,000 units. Well, maybe you do have to sell it for $1 loss because of the opportunity cost, right? So it's constantly being aware of what you have and knowing what's performing, knowing what might not be on the right trajectory, and being able to cut ties with it in favor of something better for cash.
On the items, and you say 6 to 9 months, are you setting Keepa alerts for prices going upwards as well on your current inventory, so that you're kind of like, oh, you know what, I want to make that $10. This has now hit my threshold. Maybe I sell off a little piece of it and then kind of dollar cost average my way out of the inventory at all?
I do drip feed a lot, yeah. So I'm at the point now where a lot of items I'm buying like 800 to 1,200 units of. So it does make sense to drip feed when something is 30% ROI, 50% ROI, 70%. When I do that, it's very important to be aware of the competitors, because you don't want to be the one that is holding the price back. So if you do decide to drip feed something, you need to be keeping a close eye on it and your competitor's inventory. And when they're gone, that's when you continue to raise your price. You don't want to just set your minimum and forget it. I might as well just flip at that point, So I do some drip feeding for the stuff that I buy a lot of. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good.
Cool.
Yeah. So you mentioned the example you gave about having summer clearance capital and then an opportunity rising. I imagine the same scenario happens with storage as well, potentially.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're not only managing cash flow, you're managing square footage too available.
Yeah, I didn't I knew this was going to happen, but I didn't know what it would be like, and that's profit per square foot coming into play. There was a time where I was just buying any and every toy that I thought was going to go up in price, and I quickly learned that I probably shouldn't do Nerf guns. I probably shouldn't do like very large Lego sets. I need to be more focused on stuff that I can stuff a lot of profit into an 18 by 18 by 16 heavy duty, right? So right now I'm with 2 storage units, a spare room. My girlfriend does not live with me, so I'm such a nerd. I've converted the kitchen into storage. I've got like 6 tall racks in there, and I've got the garage. So yeah, it's a constant battle. It's forced me to be more precise with my buying. So sometimes I have to say no to things that are good items, but it just doesn't make sense for me storage wise because I can get a lot more profit in this box from doing a Pokemon set or an action figure kind of thing.
That's interesting. So
Yeah,
in essence, you're increasing your bottom line by pruning the bottom layer off.
Yeah.
Both in your cash flow and storage constraints.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
Exactly. Yes.
You mentioned 6 to 9 months. Is that your typical hold time, or is it all across the board?
Yeah, I've got two major goals that I usually shoot for. I have kind of my 401k type holds, which is going to be mostly Pokemon, and then any sort of like exclusive Lego that I think has a really high ceiling, something that's like really unique, stuff that I think can 5 or 10x. Those are the things I'm comfortable holding for more than 5 years. It's a small part of my portfolio because I don't want to hold that long. But some of this stuff just has undeniable history. It makes sense to have some of it. Most of the time, I want to sell within a year. So I pulled up a fun stat. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Yeah, okay. So only 7 items in my top 50 most profitable ASINs last year I held for more than a year. And I think that's important for people to hear because a lot of people hear buy and hold and they think it's got to be a year long or 2 years or whatever. That's not the case. Like you can buy something and it's not profitable when you purchase it, but then all of a sudden it blows up 2 months later. That was still an investment, right? So going off of that stat, actually 9 out of 10 of my top 10 most profitable ASINs were all sold within 2 months of purchasing them, but they were purchased with the intention to hold them until Q4. Something just went right early, So my goal and the mindset I have is always, I'm not going to sell this until Q4, but if it happens earlier, I'm all for it. If something switches quicker, supply is wrong, I'm there for it.
Now, is there such thing as holding too long?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You have to be realistic with what sort of SKU you're holding, right? Like I can hold a booster box of Pokemon cards for 10 years and I know it'll go to $1,000 and I paid $80 for it. But if I'm holding a Descendants doll for 10 years, it's probably already at its ceiling, that $250, right? Maybe it goes to 300, maybe it goes to 400, which would be kind of crazy, but there's no world where that's $1,000. You have to be realistic with the items that you're holding. Is it a true collectible or is it just kind of a kid toy that maybe $75 is the ceiling? So you don't want to be too greedy. You have to be real with yourself. You can definitely hold way too long. I've been there.
Hearing you say that about booster boxes makes me feel like a moron based on how many I've bought for my son and not put any in the closet for myself.
Really? Oh man. Yeah. So he's pretty into it?
Yeah, thousands of cards.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I grew up on Pokemon, and my mom, before she passed, she was responsible for running a lot of events for Nintendo for Pokemon. So we had a lot of unique product that other people just would never even have seen before. And I definitely sold a lot of that way too early for beer money. I look back at my eBay history and stuff that I sold for $75 is selling for 60 grand now. So
wow.
Yeah. It makes me sick to my stomach.
Well, at least it's better than the Babe Ruth card that my grandfather put in his bicycle spokes.
Oh my gosh!
At least it's that.
That's insane.
Okay, so you've got storage units. You've converted the kitchen into storage. You've got the garage. Of course, when people are paying a premium, they want their stuff to come in really good condition. How do you manage all of your inventory so that it actually retains its condition? And of course, you can get the most profit out of it.
Yeah, it's not something I've really run into as an issue. longer term hold stuff, obviously I'm selling for hundreds and hundreds of dollars and $1,000. Of course, that's going to have some extra layers of protection. I'll bubble pouch it, box it, put one of those humidifier pouches in there. But most of the things I sell are under $100, and it really only needs a poly bag, right? A lot of the time I'm paying $20 for something and selling it for 55 within a year, and I'm pretty happy about that. Just needs a poly bag. If it's a very displayable item where the packaging seems like it could be important to the customer, then it definitely gets a bubble pouch. Again, going back to like those Lego helmets, those probably deserve a bubble pouch and a poly bag because people like to display the boxes. One tip that I got, I think this might have been from Ken from Brick Dynasty, I believe. I think he's been on the show.
Yep.
I think it was him who tweeted out about putting cardboard on your shelves if you have those shelvings that have like the rungs on them.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you put product on the shelving and it gets too heavy, those rungs will indent into the product. So putting cardboard on the shelving is pretty important if you're going to have some displayable collectible stuff, and then putting the product on top.
Nice.
Yeah.
Not too worried about like having climate control in your storage units or anything like that?
No, not in California. Certain areas you definitely should be, but I'm pretty lucky here, and my storage unit's pretty good temperature and not having to pay for temperature control.
Nice.
Yeah, these products are designed to travel the ocean in a container and survive. So most of the time they'll be okay.
True. Good point. There's also the issue of long-term storage of receipts and your documentation. How do you protect your documents?
Yeah, it's also not really that much of an issue for me because I'm mostly online and wholesale. I don't really do as much retail arbitrage anymore unless it's like Black Friday or Target Circle Week. So when I'm in store and I actually have a receipt, I'll just take a picture of it when I check out and email it to myself. But I've never had an issue having to dig into my email to find something. And just being able to download the receipts, it's pretty straightforward for me. But if you're doing retail arbitrage, you probably need some sort of scanning app or something like that.
Yeah. So when it's time to sell, what makes you choose which platform to sell on?
Expensive stuff goes to eBay for sure. I've got a 0% return rate over there, which I love. People know what they're getting into. So expensive stuff, eBay or locally. But when it comes to like those $45 to $75 action figures, lately I've been sending a lot of it to Walmart. Even though it sells slower, what I'm finding is it still moves over there. A lot of people are shopping through Google, I think, and they'll just Google the name of the product. And if Walmart is cheaper than Amazon, it'll sell just as well over there if there's not a lot of competition on it. So really just comes down to where I think I can make the most money. If I have a lot of a SKU, I'll use Amazon for overflow at this point. But the fees on Amazon have just gotten so ridiculous and they lose so much inventory now. It's so hard to justify sending a lot of stuff over there. It's been tough.
Doing any merchant fulfilling on Amazon for some things that make sense?
The last time I merchant fulfilled was that whole chlorine debacle, and I swore to myself I would never merchant fulfill again. That just left such a bad taste in my mouth, literally. All that chlorine was just so bad in my house, man. And I know toys are different, but I really have a hard time understanding that a customer can send you a message that says fake and you can get dinged for it. That really scares the crap out of me. So when I say that I'm very cautious, I'm so cautious to the point where I won't merchant fulfill because that scares the crap out of me. So I am all FBA. I'd rather just move stuff on eBay if I'm going to ship stuff myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair. So during the hold process, as you hold a product and as you guess correctly, it's becoming more valuable. It's becoming more exclusive. However, at the same time, you're losing comparables, recent comparables. So how do you decide what to price something that becomes rare like that?
Yeah, I think that's more of an issue with vintage toys because there's a lot less sales for things like that. Because everything I'm selling is within the last 6 years or so. It's modern and there are plenty of comps for it. The only time I really run into this issue is with Pokemon singles, like individual cards, or like rare sealed product that maybe there's not a ton of out there and it's a slow seller. I just price high and I allow the allow offers button. And then I actually screenshot the offers. I think that's important because then when someone messages you, you can send them proof that you have received offers in this amount and you get them to go higher. So that's been pretty useful for me. And then when you're doing collectibles, there's groups on Facebook for every collectible toy line. So you can go in those groups, join those groups, which everyone should do, by the way, because you can learn a lot. And you can even just post the item, and you might even find a buyer there, but they'll tell you what the private sales have gone for and things like that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Have you considered or have you already done any whatnot sales on some of your collectibles, or even breaking packs of cards or anything like that?
I was very close. Saul actually almost convinced me. I had a huge stack of garage sale stuff I was going to garage sale, and I was going to whatnot it. I started watching some streams to learn it, but I was just so time constrained that I ended up just selling all the garage sale stuff to my buddy so he can resell it. So the next time I have a big garage sale pile, I'm thinking about doing it. It seems pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I was surprised to see the fees are actually pretty much the same as eBay, but they have to pay shipping, which I think is nice. Yeah. But yeah, it's definitely interesting. Social selling is very interesting. It's changed the game for sure.
Right. Yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk a little bit about information overload. You've got Lego, you got Pokemon, you got action figures, you're grading cards. Like, how do you manage all of these different IPs without just becoming overloaded with the information that you have to take in to make these smart bets?
Yeah, that was a very real issue when I first started, because you want to be pulled in so many different directions. You see so many toys doing well, and you get pulled towards Monster High and Rainbow High and Marvel Legends. And what slowly started happening is I was trying to have my hand in too many things, and I started to get burned a lot more because I wasn't able to pay as much attention to them. It's just not possible, right? You can't watch every single Marvel piece of content while also watching every single WWE episode, while also watching every single anime episode that comes out for One Piece or whatever, right? It's just not possible. So I think it's important for whoever wants to do this to focus in on the franchises and intellectual properties that they sort of care about. And that's when I started making a lot better buying decisions. When I started doing a lot more of things that I like, I'm not getting pulled towards dolls, which I don't care about, and I'm not making bad buys, So I think everyone should research all the toy lines, dabble in them, lose a little bit of money, and then realize which ones are for them and which ones aren't for them, but really try and focus on the ones that they have no problem watching the content for. That will make you a better buyer for sure.
Yeah, let's lean into that a little bit. What criteria would you suggest to someone, or pose it to you? What would make you expand as far as like the criteria that you look for, and then what does testing look like with this scenario long-term holds?
Ooh, that's a good one. At this point, early on, I was down to try any toy line. I would buy something and just see how it would go, whether that was Gundam or whatever. Even if I had no idea what it was, I would try it. And again, I started to get burned. So nowadays, I really have to understand the brand. I have to understand why it's cool, why it's relevant, and why I think it will remain relevant. Otherwise, I'm a bit hesitant to do it. So, like, I'm not a big Star Wars guy. I tried to be, but I just cannot connect with that universe. So I've kind of stopped doing Star Wars Black Series stuff. I know people make money on it, but because of that, it's going to be really hard to pull me back into it. And so when a new toy line pops up, it's hard to pull me into it unless it's related to something that I kind of understand. When it comes to test buys, this is really interesting. So for toys, most of the time you want to be first to market or last to market, right? You want to be the very first person to have something, or you want to be the last person with supply. If you get caught in between, you get killed, because that's where all the competition comes in. So if you're doing test buys and you realize something is good, by the time you're ready to get that second order in, everyone else already has the data. Everyone else is going to dogpile on. You're going to get screwed. So I actually don't test buy anymore, because if I am trying something new, it's something I believe in. So I just go heavy right out the gate so that I can be first to market and I can have a lot of supply. It's risky, but you can make a lot of money doing it if you really understand the product you're investing in.
So is it easier to, how do I phrase this? Like you mentioned One Piece, right? And I think One Piece don't they have like 18 or 20 something seasons? Like
Something crazy.
but I could see that being too much history, too much canon for someone to feel confident jumping in. You know, like is there something to be said about where you jump in? Is it, I mean, with the major guys, the Superman, they're just about to reboot that in a couple days when we're recording it. You know, you can kind of, it seems easier to jump in during a reboot versus
Yep.
something that's had continuity over double-digit seasons, if not more. Am I onto something there, or
Yeah, you're
is it
absolutely
easier than I
right.
think?
No, it's hard, and that's why I don't do anime stuff. Honestly, I really don't. I know there's a lot of money to be made there, and people crush it. Whether that's with One Piece Funko, the One Piece card game. The One Piece card game, people made a fortune already, but because I'm not informed about it, I didn't want to touch it. So I would say try and learn different franchises that could be interesting to you. Like I've tried to watch some anime stuff. I've tried to watch certain kid shows, just so I can understand the product. And if it doesn't hit for me, it doesn't hit. It's hard to get into something, especially when it has so much history. But it is important to give it a shot because it could change your business, right?
Sure.
I didn't expect to like the Spider-Verse movies. I actually didn't watch the first one until the second one was about to come out, the animated ones. I didn't really like animated films, and now they're two of my favorite movies ever. And I've made tens of thousands of dollars because of those movies. So I'm glad I gave it a shot. I would imagine it would be the same if I tried, One Piece or something. I just haven't yet. So definitely encourage it.
My son would tell you to watch One Piece. He says it's excellent.
It sounds like he's got good taste. Sounds like it can guide you towards some good investments, Chris.
Most likely. Yeah, most likely.
Excuse me.
We've spent an hour kind of teaching people how to fish. Well, you have. You've spent an hour teaching people how to fish. I'd love it if you would just serve people up some fish, if it were. So, like, what kind of toy trends are kind of heating up this second half of 2025, or what should people keep their eye on over the next half of the year if they want to invest a little scratch in some long-term holds?
Yeah, this is where I can nerd out. There is so much content coming out in these next few years that's slated for release that I think the merch is going to just be out of this world. The biggest thing you're going to see next year, it's going to be everywhere. You're not going to be able to avoid it. Even more than this year is Pokemon. It's the 30th anniversary, and they're collabing with Lego. It's the first time Lego Pokemon has ever existed. It's going to be arguably probably one of the biggest toy launches we've ever seen. That will not be able to be ignored. You've got things like the new Spider-Man movie. You've got a new Marvel saga starting, right, with Fantastic Four, which is going to lead into a bit of the mutant era. I'm sure we've all seen like the X-Men movies from the 2000s, right? Hugh Jackman and stuff. We're going to be seeing those mutants, and they're whoever the new actors are going to be. So I would imagine those are going to become household names. Godzilla is rapidly expanding their franchise. You've got things like League of Legends. They are launching a card game this fall called Riftbound. I imagine they want a piece of that Pokemon pie, right? So there could be something there. It's really just about paying attention to the box office and what's going to be coming out, because that's where you can make a lot of your good purchases. For example, Stitch 1 just did $1 billion at the box office globally. Mm-hmm. It's so successful that they have announced Stitch 2. And so that tells me that there's going to be Stitch 2 merch, which means I should probably buy Stitch 1 merch when it's close to being discontinued and hold that for the Stitch movie, right? The stuff that I think might not be reprinted. Outside of box office stuff, you have two really big changes coming up. McFarlane is losing the license to DC, and they are the ones, if you go down the toy aisle at Target, you'll see McFarlane all over the place. Mattel is taking over for that. So not sure what that's going to entail. They might do something collector-ish, not sure, but that could be something worth keeping an eye on. And then also Funko gave up their license for action figures and plushes for Five Nights at Freddy's. So that is interesting. Yeah. So if you go to the website now, if you go to Funko, there is absolutely zero Five Nights at Freddy's action figures or plushes there. They're all in my storage unit now. But yeah, Jazzware is just taking over for that license. And I've heard through the grapevine they will be doing a collector edition line. And if you go back to the very first Funko action figures of Five Nights at Freddy's, that were Hot Topic exclusives, and you look on eBay, they're selling for over $1,000.
Wow.
These were $9.99 in Hot Topic. Absolutely insane. So might be something there with the Jazzwares collector line. We'll see. That fan base is very rabid. But overall, yeah, there's just so much content coming out in these next few years that I am so excited to be in this niche, because I think the merch is going to be absolutely killer. So much to look forward to.
Now you mentioned X-Men. So Marvel took over the licensing, and they're allowed to have the X-Men in their movies now.
Yep.
And you're right. There's a whole new wave of actors. They're kind of recasting the existing actors. It's crazy to think of how long those movies have been out.
Yeah.
So is that a signal there too about the Hugh Jackman designed Wolverines? If they end up recasting Wolverine, is that a signal to potentially stockpile a little bit of the old school, or is that something different when they completely change the franchise?
It's a good question. When someone gets recast, there's a lot of logistics that go on behind the scenes, I've heard, with the rights to use their face scans. So I don't think that's public knowledge, like what the agreements are. But for example, that's why Christopher Reeve hadn't had an action figure in so long, like over a decade, because they were very protective of the rights there. I don't know what Hugh Jackman's agreement is, but I do like that action figure as an investment, him in the yellow suit, because it's the first time it's been made, Right. If you look at like the Green Goblin action figure with, I'm going to mispronounce his name, but Willem Dafoe, from Spider-Man, that figure was $30 and now it's $150. And that one actually didn't follow traditional trends. I'm assuming because he probably had some agreement with the face scan of his face that limited how much they could produce. It was very quick production run, which was weird for a very popular character. So there might be something there. If Hugh Jackman stops playing Wolverine, they might not be able to make figures of him for a very long time, maybe even until he's deceased, if he's not playing the character. So I think there is definitely something there where picking up his action figures could make sense. 100%.
According to Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman's going to always play Wolverine. That was one of the jokes in the movie, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So let's talk about like long-term forecasting of the industry, if we will. Do you see it evolving? Is niche collectibles, is that going to stay profitable forever? Do economic factors weigh in? Because we know you got started with the pandemic, and a lot of people, there was a lot of cash flow, a lot of discretionary spending was cut off because stuff was closed. You can't go out to the restaurant. So we kind of saw revenge travel, and then once that got too expensive or budgets kind of blew, then it kind of moved into collectible toys as a substitute. It was kind of like a budget indulgence that way. Like, how does the world economy kind of factor into this long term?
Yeah, it's a very valid thing to be concerned about, and I was very concerned about it over the last year with the tariff situation, right? And all this gloom and doom about what's going to happen with the economy and everyone using Klarna to pay overtime. And so I started actually asking around to people that were involved in toys in some capacity during like 2008. And what I found was interesting is there was a general consensus that a lot of the toys produced in 2008 and 2009 were actually some of the most profitable ones because they were so underproduced. So if you're someone that is buying and holding, that sort of uncertainty can actually be really good because these manufacturers are seeing less sales, smaller purchase orders, they're going to produce less, but that toy still might be popular in the future, right? So as selfish as it is, like I get kind of excited for sort of uncertainty like that because I think stuff might be underproduced versus something like, Squishmallows when they were booming. And all of a sudden they produce billions of them, literally billions, and now they're not worth anything, right? Same with Funko. Funko had to literally destroy and burn their own Funko product because they started producing too many. So I think I don't want to say that collectibles are immune to, crisis like that. But there's definitely a silver lining when it comes to like economic uncertainty with collectibles. And again, I think this is important with the whole aspect of social media and social selling with like Whatnot and social media or Instagram lives and stuff and eBay lives, is that a lot more people now are in tune with the fact that they can make money from their collectibles. So more people are getting into collectibles, which creates more fans and creates more hype. So I'm bullish on it. I think there's a great future. I think it's existed before e-commerce, and it will continue to exist into whatever comes next.
How much? I'm curious. Like, are you spending every single day 8 hours a day working on the business, or is it more Warren Buffett style where you just got to think a lot, look at some charts, and you're kind of going through these sporadic times of a ton of work, and then kind of waiting for the market?
Yeah, when I first started Amazon, I was cranking it out 8 to 12 hour days every day doing retail arbitrage. That was, I think, the way to start things. Now I probably put in 4 to 6 hours a day, and it's mostly just prep because I do all the prep myself. I don't really need to source as much anymore because I kind of already know what I'm looking for. I know I want the Lego retirement list, so I know just to look when there's a Lego sale, right? I'm paying attention to social media for all the toy lines that I like, so I know what's coming out, and so I just kind of know when my leads are going to be released and then when to start monitoring them. So sourcing does not take up a lot of my time anymore. During Black Friday and during Q4 it does. I'll be sourcing constantly, but in the off season it's more just prep and pre-prepping for Q4. So a lot of the stuff I'm putting in boxes now, it's getting packed up and ready to ship to Amazon and Walmart. But that's most of my work now, is just unboxing stuff and prepping stuff.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's interesting how the habit becomes a process, and then the time required reduces. That's a lot of successful sellers. I've seen that pattern through the interviews. Very interesting. Let's talk about extremes, if you will, specifically like greatest hits, greatest misses. Can you tell us maybe one big risk that paid off, one big risk that went down in flames, if you don't mind?
Like SKU specific or as a business as a whole?
Either one. Whatever you think the better story is.
I'll share a big loss. I think it's important to share the losses, and then I'll share something risky I did that paid off. I did an article on this one, actually. It's called "My Biggest Financial Loss Ever?" ? And it's still in process. It's still a wound that's healing. Like I mentioned, the first 2 Spider-Verse movies, I made a ton of money on that merch. Absolutely crushed it, right? And I became a big fan of that franchise. And after the second movie, it was stated the 3rd movie's coming out the year after. So my brain's like, okay, I'm 2 for 2 right now. Let me crush on this 3rd one. I'm going to pre-order, I forget how much it was, $35,000 or $40,000 worth of product. Bunch of different SKUs. But I pre-ordered like $40,000 of product for this movie. Gets delayed by 3 years. It's not coming out to 2027. And a lot of the SKUs that I invested in were side characters that aren't really relevant unless they're on the big screen in the moment, So I had to make a decision where, am I really going to sit on these for 3 years to maybe make 50% ROI? Because they're not selling well right now. A lot of the characters aren't selling well. Or do I start cutting my losses and allocate that towards something better? So one of the SKUs, luckily the one I bought the most of, is actually profitable, but quite a few of them are like $20 buy cost selling for $16.99. So it hurts, man. That's probably the biggest financial loss I've had doing this. And I think with the data I had, it was a good decision because the movie was coming out, right? They just happened to all of a sudden have a creative disagreement and delayed by 3 years. So that's part of the game. It is what it is. Luckily, it's not going to put me out or anything like that out of business, but it does sting. Zooming out on the whole business, though, the riskiest thing I did was definitely take all my money out of my traditional investment methods and put it into toys. And I'm going to catch a lot of flack for that, and people are going to think I'm stupid for that, but I want to explain something here. And let me know if you guys disagree, because I'm very curious. I feel like reselling is a superpower. Okay. And once you have unlocked this superpower, it is the modern day path to financial freedom for the average dude. To unlock the superpower of reselling, you went off the traditional path. right? You didn't, no one told you to go resell. School didn't teach it. Your job didn't teach it. They told you to go to work and put your money into a 401k. But all of us went off that path and learned to resell. And so I find it interesting when people are resellers and they still contribute to their traditional methods, which is good, but then they don't contribute anything to a long-term hold. I find that strange because you have knowledge that this can actually be bring you more money than your long-term hold of your 401k that you're holding for more than 10 years, right? So if you look at Pokemon with 30 years of history, no person ever has purchased a sealed booster box, held it for 10 years, and not 4, 5, 10, 20, 30x their money. It's never happened. So to me, in the moment, it was risky, but looking back on it, I feel like it actually wasn't all that risky because we know how to resell, you know? I understand liquidity, different, but at the same time, I feel like everyone that does use traditional methods should be at least doing something with collectibles. Push back if I'm wrong. Push back if I'm wrong, though.
I would believe that wealthy people would agree with you. Their collectibles are just different. They're Monets and Degas instead of Pokemon
True.
booster packs.
Very true.
Yeah.
That is very true.
And it needs to be said that the traditional method, the traditional path, which you're right, all of us have rejected, the people we look up to didn't follow that path. They took risks. The fact this only seems risky to people on the traditional path because so much has been written about the traditional path. There's no protocols, so they don't really know what we're doing. It's unknown, and that's scary for a lot of people.
Yeah, nailed it.
What we do takes some courage, so yeah, I appreciate that statement. One last question, so we're over an hour in, and obviously you've shared so many of your methods and thought processes and whatnot. My question is, are you able to turn it off? Like, are you going to be able to grab a bucket of popcorn and just watch Superman, or are you constantly analyzing investment opportunity?
I will say one of the major drawbacks of this is that I am always reading spoilers and leaks because I want to get ahead of the curve. That's one thing that's unfortunate. But it has made me a lot of money, right? Like the number of times I have heard that a character is going to appear in a post-credit scene, and then I can go and buy up those action figures. It's great. But I do try and avoid spoilers if I don't think they're going to impact the business. But yeah, I've spoiled a lot of movies, unfortunately.
I'm curious, and this is a little off the beaten path here, but does whatever your past life was, has any of the skills from whatever you did job wise or college wise or anything like that, have you brought those into the reselling space?
Yes, actually. Well, there was a great piece of advice I got from, I used to work in hospitality. I was in sales for Country Club and then ended up managing my own club. And I had a sales partner there, and he would always drill into my head, if you don't ask, you don't get. If you don't ask for the sale, you're never going to close the sale, right? And that piece of advice has stuck with me and literally made me so much money in this business, just that simple piece of advice, because the number of times I have asked for a discount, asked to see the back room in a Ross, asked to, can you waive this fee? All kinds of things in this space where it's like, if you are kind and you can provide value to someone and you're not annoying about it, there's no harm in just asking. Mm-hmm. If you don't ask, you don't get. And it has generated a ton of profit for me, and obviously was a great tip from my past life in sales. So definitely.
I like it.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about me. I've never had a problem asking that question, as long as I think that, I'm being nice. But what is it, do you think, that make most people stop short of asking those things?
That's got to be fear of rejection, right? Fear of, people don't like to be told no. They don't. Mm-hmm. And it can make people uncomfortable, especially when you're asking for a favor. People don't like to ask for favors. It gets you out of your comfort zone. But sometimes you can ask for a favor and you're indirectly doing them a favor, right? Mm-hmm. If you're asking for a discount, if you buy 500 units of this, you're doing them a favor. There's no harm in asking. No one gets hurt, but people shy away from that for sure.
Yep. Yeah. And once they do you one favor, people are usually willing to do you more favors.
Yes.
So people A lot of people don't know that. All right, we always like to do a little bit of a lightning round at the end. So I've got a series of questions that we think pop out some interesting answers. If you could put one message on a billboard that every single Amazon and eBay seller and Walmart seller would see, what would it say?
Oh man, I can't expand on these.
No, you can answer as long as you need to.
Oh, okay. I would say you say lightning, and so I feel like I gotta maybe just provide value. Not everything has to be chasing the dollar constantly. You can provide value to Walmart's customers. You can provide value to Amazon's customers. Package your stuff nice. Don't ship in stuff that's got a bunch of dents on it and think you can get away with it. Take the only at Target labels off when you're sending it to Walmart. Provide value.
That's good.
I like it.
What is the best personal or business purchase you've made in the last year under like $500 or so?
Ooh, people are going to hate this one, but my Alexa has actually bought me back so much time. The number of times I can just walk past it and say, reorder paper towels instead of having to go and sit down on my computer and order it because I'm going to forget later, So I've bought back so much time with my Alexa in my kitchen, just being able to reorder things and ask it questions and things like that.
Nice.
Yeah.
She just reordered you paper towels, so hopefully you're a little.
I know, right? Yeah.
Who's one person or a couple people in business that you really admire that maybe most people may not know, and what have you learned from them?
Ooh. I mean, I think most people watching this probably know like Steve French and Tracy, Seven Figure Grammy. I've got to shout them out. I'm in contact. They're the two people from e-commerce that I'm in contact with every day. Steve's the hardest working guy in Amazon, and Tracy's the nicest woman in Amazon. So definitely them. Shout out to Jonathan Cleater. I don't think he posts much on social media. I don't know if you guys know him. He goes by Lego Kingpin sometimes. One of the best product analysts that I've had the pleasure to network with. People like Jeff Senza have been great. Learned a lot from him. People that no one really knows of. I'll have to think on that one. Let me see if I can come back to that one. But I think most people know those people. Yeah.
I'll see if I can get John on the podcast. John and I go way back. I think we started maybe around the same time. And he is an absolute wealth of knowledge.
Oh yeah. Great guy. I'm sure he would love to hop on here. Yeah.
So what's the best question that someone's asked you in last few months?
Best. I don't know about best, but I always appreciate, and one of my favorites is when someone comes to me and says, what do you think about this toy? But they come with their analysis first. I think that proves that they're willing to put in the work and they've taken the time to read what I've said about how to analyze something. And it provides a lot of value because if someone just comes to you, what do you think of this? I might miss something that you see. So it's important to come to me with, here's what I see. What do you see? And maybe we cook up something, So that's probably my favorite question I get because it can be a very profitable and productive conversation.
Excellent.
I like that. What's one book that you've gifted or recommended the most?
Toy Folio by Greg Webb, for sure. You guys familiar with Greg Webb?
Yep.
He's kind of the godfather of toy investing. He wrote a book called Toy Folio, How to Invest in Toys Like Stocks. It's on Amazon, and it's a really good introduction to this business model. He focused a lot more on like local clearance, Walmart clearance and things like that, which doesn't work that well for me in the Bay Area, but it's a great introduction. He's an amazing dude. And I'll always recommend that book because again, he's one of the major contributors to this niche.
Nice. I know people are going to want to shoot you a follow. Where is the best place for people to find you?
Twitter at the Toy Investor, or thetoyinvestor.com. Those are the two best places to find me. I don't really use Instagram much. I just get annoyed at all those ads of automated Amazon stores, Right. Twitter's where I do the most of my posting, and then my newsletter is where I post a lot of content. Yeah.
Perfect. We'll make sure to have links to both of those down in the show notes. So go give them a follow. We always end with a quote of the week, and I thought one of the best ones here was from Benjamin Franklin. An investment in knowledge pays the best interest. taking some time to learn your craft, to study those Keepa charts, to see those similarities, has certainly paid off well for you. And I think that is the case for just about everybody. And investing in your part of your newsletter is both free and paid, right? So I would imagine investing
Yes.
in the paid newsletter would pay some massive dividends. So
Yeah. Should I do a little self promotion?
yeah, absolutely.
Please.
Okay. So there's a free newsletter, which is basically just weekly updates on whatever's kind of pertinent in the toy world. But all the real meat is in the paid newsletter, which is $40 a month. It's not a lead list, but I do talk about leads occasionally, and I do analyze every single Lego set. But there's a 7-day free trial. You get full access to see everything I've ever posted. It's long form content. It's videos. And you can see if it's for you. If it's not, no worries. But a little bit biased, but I think it's a no-brainer for the price points and how much money you can make with the knowledge. So check it out.
Absolutely. That's at thetoyinvestor.com.
Yep.
Dude, this was fantastic. I really appreciate you
Yes.
taking the time to sit down with us. This is something I'm going to add to my own portfolio of sourcing. So thank you, man.
Of course. If you guys have any questions, please reach out.
Will do. All right. That's the pod, everybody. We'll see you in the next one.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to Clear the Shelf with Chris and Chris. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a screenshot on your phone and share it to Facebook, Instagram, or your favorite FBA group, and be sure to tag me and let me know why you liked it and what you'd like to hear more from us in the future. Also, I'd like to give you some free gifts for listening. Head over to rabbittrailchallenge.com and repricerchallenge.com for some free courses to further your business. Thanks for listening.